Thanks so much for joining us for Everybody Confident Authors Talk Size Representation. Today's authors are Julie Murphy, Crystal Maldonado, and Lisa Fipps. My name's Kristen. I'm one of the teen librarians at the Ocean County Library. Joining me today is my colleague, 𝗍𝗲. Hi, 𝗍𝗲. Another teen services librarian at the Ocean County Library. We're so excited to be hosting this important discussion today. It is my pleasure to welcome our three amazing authors. Julie Murphy is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of the young adult novels 𝗵𝗶𝗃𝗲, now a film on Netflix, 𝗵𝗃𝗃, Ramona Blue, and Side Effects May Vary. 𝗬𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 is her debut middle grade novel. After several wonderful years in the library world, Julie now writes full time. Thank you for joining us today, Julie. Yeah. Crystal Maldonado is a young adult author writing inclusive stories about fat brown girls. Her debut novel, Fat Chance Charlie Vega, is a 2021 New England Book Award winner, while her newest, No Filter and Other Lies, explores teenage life in the social media age. Thank you for joining us today, Crystal.
Yay, excited to be here.
Yes, we're so excited. Lisa Fipps, our last author. Hi, Lisa. Lisa Fipps is an award-winning former journalist, current director of marketing for a public library, and an author of middle grade books. Starfish is her award-winning debut novel. Thank you for joining us today, Lisa. So structure, we're doing a roundtable. I'll ask some questions and our fabulous guests will respond to them, take turns. And so our first question, tell us a little bit about your work and its relation to body confidence.
Well, I'm happy to jump in because I just feel like I got all the feelings. I'm super excited to be part of this panel. And I haven't had a chance to talk about Charlie Vega in a bit, so I'm excited to just be here. So like my intro said, I'm trying to write books that feature fat brown girls, both that are, the books themselves are about fat bodies, but also fat girls who just like kind of live their lives, because I think we need both of those out in the world. We need books that talk about what it's like to be a teenager and to be just a person who exists in a fat body, and what does that mean and what do we encounter. But I think those of us who are fat also just want to see ourselves in books and see ourselves doing cool stuff, because I never thought that was like a thing that I could experience when I was younger. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Julie Murphy, because I was actually inspired to get into writing because I read 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗲, and it was the first book that had a fat protagonist as the romance lead. And I was just like, my mind was totally blown. And I was like, okay, I want to do this, but like with a brown girl. Like, can we make this happen, people?
That's awesome. I like, every time I hear something like that from like a peer of mine, it's just like so exciting, and I'm so honored. So yes, I'm Julie Murphy, and I'm probably most well known for 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗲, which came out in 2015, about a fat girl who decides to start, or accidentally, I guess, starts a little bit of a revolution when she joins her small town's beauty pageant. It took me a moment once I became a writer, and once I started writing like as my job, for me to figure out that I wanted to write about fat people, and for me to figure out that I felt empowered enough to write about fat people. I think there was a lot of fear there for a while that I wouldn't do it right, or I would fall into all the same pitfalls of like so many things that had come before me that had disappointed me. So I mean, I'm sure we'll get more into this as the conversation evolves, but I just, once I wrote 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗲 and figured out that there was, I hate to say an audience, but there were other people like me who were just as excited about something like this as I was. It made me want to like rewrite history and see fat characters everywhere. So the fact that like there's even enough of us to have a round table right now, there's even enough of us to have panels at festivals to talk about this, like it's really incredible. It's really inspiring, and I'm really glad to be a part of it. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Crystal said about Julie, because I'm like, you know, I admit I fangirl when I see Julie, because I'm like, she just got it. You know what I mean? She broke through, right? So the rest of us could break through as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. So kudos to you. I think for me, you know, when I was growing up, and I was a avid reader, and public library, school library, and I probably could have broke my family financially at the Scholastic Book Fair. But I never found a book about a girl like me. You know, I never found a book about a fat girl who was being bullied relentlessly, including by her family, and was given the tools to deal with the emotions that come with all of that. And then really what I really wanted, other than, you know, to see myself and to get some tools to deal with what I was dealing with, was for that book to say, and you're okay, right? Because that's not what books about fat people ever do. They always are on diets, and they are always like, they feel better after they lose weight. And then they get the self-confidence, and then they're like, oh, I didn't need to lose weight to get the self-confidence. I'm skinny now. And I say that now, but I'm skinny, you know, and you're like, really? Okay. And they weren't written by own voices. They were written by people who were, you know, size 5, size 7, size 12s or whatever. And, you know, I'm like, you haven't lived this life, and it shows. It shows that you have not lived this life. And it's interesting, you know, when you see characters like, my God, I could go off all day on this, but like her hands like hams and fingers like sausages and doughy chins. I'm like, really? We really have to divert to food because we can't think of anything more clever to describe a fat person. And why do we need to describe the fat person? I mean, is it essential? I mean, and if you do, I mean, there's just, don't get me started. So the fact that we can start having these conversations, that we, like she said, we have panels now about this. The fact that, you know, own voices includes people of size and people of color and people of different abilities and, you know, LGBTQ and the whole intersectionality of all of that. There we go. Now we're talking, you know, so.
Well, and just to add to that super quickly, just the word that we use the word fat, and it's not like an insult. It's just fat. And we're just talking about it. And like, that is, I don't know, revolutionary, because that was an insult. Like for me growing up, it was such a loaded term. Right. And now that we get to kind of take that back, there's great power in that.
Just like the word tall or short, it's just a descriptor.
Yeah.
When I half the time it's not needed, right?
Yeah. When I first started touring for 𝗵𝗶𝗀, I used to have to spend probably like 10 minutes at the beginning of every conversation or every panel explaining, like, this is why I use the word fat. I know it might mean a lot of things to you. This is what it means to me. I don't want you to be triggered by this word, but I use it for very specific reasons. And now to look out and like, we're nowhere near where we need to be, but now to look out into an audience and to see people nodding along, like they understand that like the word fat is just a word. It's exciting. And, you know, I'm a very pessimistic person, but even I feel a little bit of hope every time I see people nodding along with that. So
when I was making the, oh, go ahead.
You know, that she's a pessimist. I'm like, okay, good. That makes me feel good. I mean, not that you are, but because I tend to be as well. So
when I was working on the questions, I was like, oh, should I say something like, I need to make sure that everyone is comfortable with the use of the word fat, but also I didn't want to. Yeah. Like, that's up to you all, but this makes me have a question. Do you remember when you reclaimed fat?
Yeah, I think for me, it was probably like sometime around the time of 2011, 2012. I had recently gotten married, and prior to my wedding was the last time I personally dieted. And I came back from my honeymoon and I saw all these pictures of myself in swimsuits and like totally sunburned and having the time of my life. And I had at the same time started to read a lot on like websites that are totally defunct now, like 𝗍𝗄 and places like that. And it was like, I was reading the kind of stuff that made my heart race because it made me so nervous, because it was like women who were saying that they were giving up on dieting and that they were embracing the word fat and they were going to wear swimsuits in public. And like, I know that all of that now in like the age of TikTok sounds totally mundane, but back in 2011, 2012, I was freaking out about this. And I remember reading all of these things and then seeing these photos, like probably the first photos of myself in swimsuits since I was like a child. And I was just like, I can't live like this for the rest of my life. Like I have so much life left to live that this is going to become so annoying and I can't bear it, or I have so little life left to live that it's a waste of time. And that was really the turning point for me when I started saying fat, and all my friends were still cringing at it and saying, don't say that about yourself. And, I was ready.
Yeah. It's interesting because like you said, your friends say, don't say that about yourself. And it's like, well, then you obviously think of it as, you know what I mean? And not to be rude about it, but it's just like, okay, then what are you thinking about that word? Because I just saw it as a descriptor, like, hey friend, you're tall, and hey friend, you're short, and hey friend, whatever. And then, I'm fat. I think for me, part of it is what my therapist calls cognitive dissonance, right? It's like when you start, the more you read about, the diet culture and what we've done to our bodies, and you understand, eating disorders, and you understand how the body actually works. It's not calories in, calories out. It's far more complex. If you start getting all that in your brain, and it starts pushing against all the stuff that's been in your brain, right? Like, don't eat carbs, eat sugar, don't drink sugar, don't eat after a certain time of day, and all the other rules that they give us in diet culture. There comes this point where your brain's got to go, okay, wait, these are two different messages. Which way do I go? Right. And I think for me that it's like the more cognitive dissonance there was, the more I was like, okay, I'm fat. I'm not going to be ashamed of that anymore. It's just who I am. I am, I'm part British, I'm part French, I'm part Belgian, I'm fat. It's all the same. It's just who I am. And so, why people don't need to apologize or feel bad about being tall or being short or any of the other billions of things you can be, blonde, whatever. Mm-hmm. Why should I be ashamed for being fat? And so I think that's where it started becoming a more comfortable zone where I was like owning it. Yeah, I'm fat. Yep, sure am. Always have been, always will be.
I love that. I wish I had come to the word fat a little sooner than I did, but for me, it was like this weird dichotomy where I existed online in on LiveJournal and then eventually Tumblr. And there was this one community that I found myself in called Fashionista, which was just like adorable fat folks posting pictures of themselves wearing outfits. And so that was the first time that I was in college. So probably like 2010, 2011-ish. And so that was the first time I had started seeing the word fat used in a way that was just a descriptor. And I felt like it blew my mind. And so online, I started embracing that term. But in my real life, I still had a really hard time vocalizing it and sharing that with other people for some of the reasons we've already talked about, like that reflex that people have to say, oh, you're not fat, you're insert whatever, you're beautiful, as if you can't be both things at the same time. And so it wasn't until I started writing Fat Chance Charlie Vega and consciously made the decision to refer to Charlie as a fat character and have her embrace that word that I started to be brave enough to kind of marry those two identities. I had this online life and then I had my real life, and I kind of kept them separate because I felt like my online life was too radical in some ways, and that my real life wasn't ready for it. And so then once I started writing Charlie Vega, I was like, okay, I think now I feel ready and I have the tools and I'm strong enough to be able to explain myself without devolving into tears. I'm a very sensitive person. And so even when I'm trying to explain myself, sometimes I just cry. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So around then I was like, okay, I feel like I've done this enough where I want this term to just be something that doesn't feel so loaded. And I want it to feel like something that's mine again, right? Like it had been a word that had been used and weaponized against me for so long that it felt magical to be like, oh no, this 3-letter word is my 3-letter word. And if people are going to refer to me as fat anyway, I would like to be the one that gets to decide that I'm fat and I'm beautiful and I'm all of these things at the same time. So probably wasn't until like 2017, 2018 when I started actually being like, oh, I wrote a book and it's going to come out and it has the word fat in the title. Huh. And like that, I started to embrace it publicly, at least.
Yeah, I love how you said weaponized, because I feel like the word has been weaponized and we're disarming it.
Yes, totally.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked, I heard some of the answer to what did you learn growing up about body image from media, but feel free to put more in there. But the more important side of that question, what messages about body image do you hope your work sends?
Oh God, I grew up in the like Lindsay Lohan, Paris Hilton, Nicole Richie era of like, if you were bones, that was the beauty standard. And so I was like, oh no, there is something wrong with me. Like, how am I going to fix this? And that was obviously super damaging and really hard. And it's really hard when you're a teen and you're just trying to figure out like your identity, but then you also have this added layer of like, oh, my body's wrong too somehow. And I didn't even know that it was wrong. And I think a lot of us, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think a lot of us who are fat, we can even sometimes pinpoint to a moment where it was like a life before we knew we were fat. And then the life went after someone called us fat or told us we were fat. And then we were like, oh, this is a thing I have to worry about now. And so for me, my hope with Fat Chance Charlie Vega and with No Filter and Other Lies is just that whoever picks up those books like doesn't have to worry about any of that and sees the beauty in themselves, or even just sees the neutrality in their body, right? Like, because I don't even think all of us have to love our bodies all the time because it's complicated and it's a journey. And some days we're going to be like, yay. And some days we're going to be like, and that's okay. That's part of it. But just feeling that like neutral feeling towards ourselves where we're not holding on to like all of this angst and hatred, and can find ways to celebrate ourselves and can find ways to like Julie said, take pictures of ourselves in a swimsuit, or to wear a swimsuit, or to, if it's really hot, like show off your arms or whatever it is, and just be okay with that and embrace who you are the same way you would embrace like a friend, and you'd never look at them and be like, why are you wearing that? You'd be like, you look so cute. Oh my God, where'd you get that top?
I love that you brought up neutrality, because I think it's really where I found the most joy in my body, is feeling completely neutral about it. And you know, that's not necessarily like the direction of the question, but I really like, it's such a relief to know that like when I'm sitting down to write, sometimes I'm just writing a fat character and they are not like battling against themselves or battling against society. They're just existing. I know for me, that's when I find like I'm most at ease with myself. But like speaking back to like my adolescence, it was sort of like the only way you could acknowledge that you were fat is if you also acknowledged that it was a flaw, that it was something that needed to be resolved, that it was something that needed to be fixed. So I could only acknowledge my fatness if I was like incredibly self-deprecating, to the point where like, I know I'm a bad person. I know that this makes me less. I know that this, you know, has basically like marred my entire life going forward. That was, I mean, and I grew up in theater. And so it was like, I was always like the fat mom or like the angry lady on the side of a street, or like, you know what I mean? Like I was never, it sent a very clear message to me every time I was cast in a show that I could never play that role, not only on stage, but in my own life, like the role of the leading lady or the leading person. So I think that like at first with my books, like I was just so excited for someone to find it and for them to not feel alone and for them to feel seen, because if they didn't feel alone, if they felt seen and they didn't feel alone, then I didn't feel alone either. Like it was really the most delightful echo chamber to just find that there were other people like me and who appreciated the things that I did and were looking for the same things that I was looking for. But I think that over time, that goal of mine has really evolved into just like, if I do nothing else, if no one else remembers my name, I just hope that like the work that I've created will blaze a path for those behind me. And that's for me the end all be all. Is I want to see other creators, I want to see other writers, I want to see fat actors, I want to see all of those people like coming behind me to the point where like I'm not even relevant anymore. That's what I think is going to be most exciting.
You know, what Crystal said about you remember the before moments, like, wait a minute, like, and I even put that in Starfish, like there's this moment where I think it's called what, why, who, how, when, like the first time you break a fat girl rule, you know, that society has for us. You don't know that the rule exists until you break the very first one. And then, you know, right? You wear that sundress that you have, because when I was little, I loved sundresses and halter tops and everything sleeveless and shoulderless, you know? And then I wore one once and they were like, oh, you've got big arms. And I was like, and that's bad. Right? I mean, I didn't understand that was a bad thing. I played basketball a lot. I swam a lot. I mean, I thought that was muscle. I'm okay with that, you know, but they were like, you shouldn't wear that. And I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? And then what Julie said, how you have to, it was okay to say fat if you added, like, you know, you could say stuff like, I'm fat, but I've been working on a new diet, or I'm going to start at a new gym. And you always have to add that, but, or, and, you know, and you have to qualify yourself for everything that you say and do and believe and do. It's just amazing. And like, you can't even eat. I mean, like, I remember growing up, like if I ever sat down and ate in front of people, which I tried to avoid eating in front of people at all times, it was like, and I would say, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten since yesterday at 2, right? I wouldn't make them know, look, I have a right to eat this salad because I haven't eaten in 24 hours. You know, I had to justify the fact that I could eat, which all bodies need food all day long. But you know what I mean? It's just like, there's all those qualifiers. And I love the word echo chamber, Julie. I think that's a perfect example of what you're talking about. It's an echo chamber. And when you realize you're not alone, you start getting more confidence. The more confidence you have, the more you help other people come out to join you in that echo chamber. And then, you know what I mean? It just gets bigger and bigger and more echo and more echo.
What things boost you up and build your body confidence?
I think really, I had this awful bias growing up that I didn't want to be friends with other people. I didn't want to be romantic, or I didn't want to be friends with other fat people. I didn't want to be romantically involved with other fat people because I thought that it would somehow prove that like, oh, she's just a fat person. She can only hang out with other fat people because those are the only kinds of people who find her interesting. And when I finally got over that like jerk bias that I had and realized like what a joy it was to have other fat people in my life, it really changed so much for me because suddenly like I was seeing other fat people and I thought they were hot and I thought they were cool and I thought they were pretty and I thought they were smart. And if they could be all those things, then I could be all those things. And like Crystal was talking about like the fashion movement on Tumblr back in the day, like that was a game changer for me. Like I was like, these people are so cool. Like I can, like, why, like, how are they different from me? They are not. Like we're all in the same boat here. And I think that like one thing that I'm always constantly telling people is like, if you can diversify your social media following, like you're diversifying what your eyeballs are seeing every day. You're changing the norm. It's like we don't have a lot of choices sometimes in what the media feeds us, but when it comes to social media, we truly do have the power to decide what we are feeding our brain every day. And I'm not going to sit here and like lecture and talk about the dangers of social media or anything like that, because that's just tired and old. And like, I'm not interested in that. I do think that there is a lot of power in social media. And I think that like, just, you know, for lack of a better word, like changing your brain diet, like showing yourself like people who excite you and people who look like you and people who don't, like that was really a game changer for me. And that's what, like, even on my bad body days, like seeing photos of my super hot fat friends, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's good to be in this body.
I just wanted to like jump up and down and scream yes to everything you just said. Sorry, Lisa, I just had to add that.
No, I do. I agree. And it's interesting because I find the same thing. It's like, I have in the last few months intentionally sought out like fat people with huge followings, you know what I mean, who are fat advocates. And maybe they, you know, there's like some that are into fashion, some that are into like, you know, anti-diet culture, some that are into whatever. And just my feed changing too. I mean, you because, you know, depending on who you follow is kind of how your feed analytics go. And to see every day I see like pictures of women in bathing suits or at a party with hot guys, you know, and they're fat like me. And it's just like, oh yeah, we do have lives. Oh yeah, we're not all like, you know, selling sunset where they're all like in high heels and stuff.
I want to see a fat person on Selling Sunset. Like I would love to see that.
Same.
Give me more fat reality trash TV.
Yeah, because I see them on their high heels and I'm like, and I'm kind of tall for a girl. I'm like 5'9", so I never wear high heels. So I'm like, can I see someone in flats on that TV show? It's not like in stilettos. Can I please? Can I for once? But anyway, but I think that's important. And I think too, just I think one of the things that also helped me too, because growing up, I was always taught, you know, no man will ever love you because you're fat, ever, period, ever. I mean, and I'm still single now, but it's like, you know, I've had relationships, and it's just like, when I feel like I need to feed myself that. I need to feed myself fat women in relationships and remind myself, yeah, we have relationships too, and we have needs for relationships. And we, you know, I think it's what, like, I loved, why don't Crystal and I just say ditto to everything Julie says and we'll be good. But no, like when she said, it's like a diet, a mind diet. And, you know, we hear the word diet and we think, you know, bad, but a diet is anything you feed yourself. And I think when we feed ourselves, you know, that bone is pretty, and everything above bone isn't, you know, that's where we get in trouble.
I agree. I mean, I'll second everything about social media. If you can follow fat folks, I swear it's going to change your life. Mm-hmm. And we're all on social media all the time anyway, so we might as well fill up our feeds with some cute, hot, fat folks. But I also was a huge fan back in the day, and I'm still a huge fan of the work of Leslie Kinzel. So she, yeah, right, XO
Leslie and Marianne.
Oh, they're right.
Game
Two whole
changers.
cakes. Just they did such phenomenal work. And one of the things that has always stuck with me that Leslie wrote in one of her, I think it was an XO Jane article, I'm not sure, was when she was just talking about how she went out of her way to take photos of herself and her body, even if she wasn't going to look at the photos right away, right? So she was just taking the pictures, and sometimes she would wait a couple of days and she would come back to them. But the idea was that getting comfortable in taking those photos, being in the photos, having her body on display helped her like normalize what her own body looked like. And it helped her get out of that mindset of like, I'm not going to be in this picture because I need to lose 10 pounds, or I'm not going to be in this picture because I don't feel like I look super cute. And it just made it so that her body was just her body. And it was like this thing that like pumped blood and like got her from point A to point B. And he, like, reading that essay, I feel like I cried and see big emotions, and like just it really resonated with me. And it was the push I needed to get in the picture and to take those selfies and to get comfortable, just like appreciating myself. And when I was feeling pretty, being like, you know what, I am going to take a picture of myself because I feel really hot right now, or I feel really cute, and I want to celebrate that. And this is multi-layered, right? Like, as women or like female presenting folks, like we have the other added layer of like, don't be vain and it's vapid to take pictures of yourself and whatever. And so just to be able to like push back on all of that and to say, no, I deserve this, was really revolutionary for me, and can be a way that like helped me kind of get okay with my body, and can be a way you can do it in your own life privately, right? Like, you don't have to post those pictures for anybody. They can just be for you, or they can be for your partner or someone you care about, or God, you can send them to your friends and be like, do I look cute like this or whatever? Like, it can be whatever it is. And there's something really powerful in that. Especially when you get to decide what the narrative is around your body instead of everyone else deciding that.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. I feel like taking photos of myself felt like I was confronting my biggest fears, but I really am one of those people that like the how do I unlock my fears through knowledge? And so just in like knowing, like, I have stretch marks and I can see them in a photo, or I have a double chin and you can see it from literally every angle. Yes. Like, just finally embracing those things and knowing those things, so that my expectations surrounding myself weren't lesser, but they were just different. Like, I'm sure that all of us felt this way, but there was a time in my life where I was terrified for like anyone to know what size my clothing was, or
yes.
like in high school and gym, I used to cut the tags out of my clothes because I was like, what if they see it's a size 20, or what if they like, you know, like all these things, because I was just like, what did they think existed under all my clothes? A thin person? Do you know what I mean? Like,
you just unlocked this memory for me when Bill's my husband, and when he and I first started dating, he tried to do this very sweet thing where he looked up I had like a shawl, and he looked at the tag because he wanted to buy me like a little jacket or whatever. And he was like, I looked at your shawl to find out your size, and I burst into tears. And he was like, I wanted to celebrate with you. And I was like, no, nobody can ever know that I wear a 2X on top. Like, that's so upsetting. And I like lost it. And yeah, what was I so afraid of? But there was a real fear of like, if someone found out, what would they think? And it's like, this is what your body looks like.
Yeah.
They know.
Yeah, I started cutting out tags when I was in 7th grade in gym class. Was what sparked
my God.
Because they were always stealing my clothes and trying to put them on, and then like, you know, oh, look how much more, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And so I started taking that out of that. And I was in this relationship once, and I thought you were going to say what I was going to say, but he wanted to buy me something, and he didn't know what size I wore. So he's looking through my closet, and it's like, oh, tags are gone. And he's just like, Lisa, you know? And I'm like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, nice thought, you know, but
yeah.
And I think too, what else helped me, and I forgot to say this, was my mom had Alzheimer's. And you know, I started realizing the importance of memories, right? And making memories. And when I was going through photos, because I'm a planner, and so long before her funeral last year, 2 years before her funeral, I was looking up, you know, getting stuff ready. I was not going to try to go through photos right before the funeral. And I was like, oh my God, there were decades. I refused to let anyone take my picture. I mean, there are some really great memories of like, when I went to, you know, the beach with my nephew or whatever. And it's just like, They're gone. Don't have them. They're not encapsulated anywhere because I didn't want anyone to know I was fat. You know what I mean? Like if you see me, you know, right? And I think it was, I didn't want to see me.
Right.
I wasn't ready to see me. And I think really the pandemic has really helped because being on Zoom and having to see yourself on the thing for so long, you're starting to go, okay, well, that's what I look like, right? Yeah. Because you see yourself, because I make really funny faces and I'm always doing weird things with my hands. And so it's like, I've got, oh, well, that's what I look like. And I think it's really helped me get like over that, you know, like, what do you look like? Because you forget, I don't know how this, and I never looked in mirrors for years from the time I was like 6th grade until like 7 years ago. I only looked in a hand mirror to do my makeup and my hair. I didn't own a mirror. Now, you can see I have one back there. I have several in my house now, but it was like, I just didn't even want to look at what I look like, right? And then I think when you get to that point where you look at yourself and you're like happy, or you're neutral, either way, but you look at yourself and you're, that's me. And I like me. I like who I am, you know? And there's more to me than what my body is anyway.
Yeah, if you need permission to put up those mirrors all over your house, do it. You just be like, I'm so hot and so cute and like.
And everyone else might think you're a vampire, so just put the mirrors up.
Unless that's why you don't have them, because you don't want people to know that you are a vampire.
Okay, well, I wasn't going to go on that truth tonight. It was a different topic.
It's a different panel.
You've exposed me. I'm a vampire.
How has social media affected your writing, whether it's through reader interactions or in other ways?
I think for me, it's helped me. Like I felt worried that there wasn't room, I think, for a story like Charlie's. And I, as part of like the publishing, you know, journey, I got rejected a lot. And I was told like nothing happens in the story and nobody's going to want to read it and blah, blah, blah. And so once this book came out and I started to hear from readers who were like emotionally affected just by even seeing the cover and seeing themselves in Charlie in that way, I like felt so just heartened and emboldened. And just, I remember telling Bill before the book got published, I was like, if one person reads this and just feels something and feels seen and feels like they can be the main character because I wrote this story, then I'll have done exactly what I set out to do. And so to hear from folks, even before the book came out, you know, them just seeing the cover and celebrating this idea that there is a fat girl on a cover and she just looks kind of happy and beautiful. And we so rarely get that. For me, that kind of gave me bravery, I think, and gave me confidence, because I was super nervous to put myself out there and to talk about these things and to talk about bodies and to talk about being fat. And I was worried about getting pushback. And I mean, not to say I haven't gotten it, I've definitely gotten a question or two of like, well, why don't you just lose weight? Or why didn't Charlie just go on a diet? And like, those have come, but the overwhelming amount of positivity has reinforced that there is such a strong need for stories like ours and stories like Dumpling and Pumpkin and Starfish and all of these stories. Like, they're so desperately needed, to the point where sometimes, like, I have had readers who read the second book, No Filter, which is about a fat character, but not about her fatness. It's just, she's just living and she goes on social media and like does bad stuff. And people have been like, this book was not about being fat. And I'm like, right, we should have all those things. But that, I think, reiterates how necessary these stories are, because it's still so revolutionary to just have fat people exist, right? And so for me, it's been nothing short of amazing to interact with folks on social and to see like cover recreations of Charlie Vega and all of that. And I like have this folder on my desktop that I save everything so that when I'm feeling like an imposter, I can go back and look at it and be like, no, there's people out there who I swear they want to read this stuff. So for me, it's been good.
Yeah, I think for me on social media, it's been this way where people connect to me, because I think, you know, even though it's really weird, there's like this dichotomy, right? That social media is very public,
Yes,
but yet you feel anonymous. You know what I mean? It's like people go on, and that's why they can say some really stupid things on Twitter, because they feel like it's anonymous, and you know, then they get, you know, trashed for being horrible people, and then people, I didn't know anyone's going to read that. Oh yeah, because there's only millions of people who see this. But anyway, but it's given me, it like I get all these like private messages through social media from like kids and adults and stuff that have connected with Starfish, you know, in so many different ways. I mean, there's been kids who've written about, like, this one little boy had an autoimmune disorder and was made fun of because of that. And he, you know, he connected just through Starfish for that. It had nothing to do with weight, right? It just connected to how people treat you when you're different than the norm, which I just don't even know what that is, because it's like, you said when fat people exist, Crystal, and I was just like, yeah, because it's so funny, like 70% of Americans are fat, and yet does literature reflect that? Does social media reflect that? Does media reflect that? Does anything, does fashion reflect that? You know what I mean? I mean, fashion is getting better, but it's one of those things where I've always said, that's like, if you want one example of anti-fat bias and how it is so entrenched in our society, look at the fashion industry, because we are capitalists. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Americans are capitalists, and we have ignored over 70% of the market and only catered to the less than 30. Really? In what capitalist society would they go after 30% of potential buyers and skip the 70 some? Because they don't want, I mean, they act like we don't exist, like that we'll go away, right? Or that we should go away, or we should be invisible or whatever. But yeah. Sorry, I might have gotten detract. Right?
It's no, I get it. Yeah. We want to wear cute clothes too. Come on.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah. Julie.
Oh no. I was just going to blame it on the patriarchy. That's all. Yeah. We're a patriarchy before we were a capitalist society. And like, you know, it's absolutely like, we love money, but we really hate fat people, and we hate fat people more than we love money. So that makes total mathematical sense. But as far as social media, I really go through waves of like feeling excited to be there. And then there are times in my life where I turn into like a 13-year-old girl who just wants to like write poetry on her wall and does not want to be perceived by anyone. And I think right now I'm in one of those places where like, you know, the times when I love being on social media, and I love interacting with readers, and I love hearing like how my books are part of a reader's everyday life, to the extent that they would like share about it on social media or post about it. Like, that's so cool and exciting, especially because I feel like that about certain authors for sure. Like, a book will be so good, I just have to share it with someone, or I just have to like post a picture of me on a vacation with this book that I'm so excited about. And so sometimes it's really comforting and it's really exciting, because I have this habit of writing a book and having no idea what it means or what it is until it goes out into the world and someone else can tell me what it means and what it was to them. It's probably not a good habit, but it's sort of my own writing journey. And then, you know, there are times when that's overwhelming. And I think that like, I think that social media will always have that ebb and flow feeling. And I think the healthy thing is not to expect it to always be perfect, but to always be able to recognize when it's ebbing and when it's flowing. So yeah, it's especially as someone who is an older millennial and didn't grow up with social media being a norm. Like, if I close my eyes, I can still hear the sound of my AOL dial-up. So it's still a thing where I'm like, is this really a part of my everyday life? But I love the connection it gives me to readers, because it's I get so much anxiety about emails. And so it's a nice way to like connect with readers and see like what they're up to and what they're excited about, with me feeling like, oh my God, I owe someone an email and I'm gonna just like die under the weight of this email because I'm never gonna figure out how to respond to it.
I feel that.
Yeah. Like, how do I words? I don't know.
I don't know. It's a good thing we don't have to do words for our jobs.
No.
We're going to go to some of the Q&A because we got a bunch of different questions in the chat here. And I feel like all of those are more important than the questions that we never got to, because this could be 4 or 5 different programs. So Kel's got some questions for us.
Great.
Yes, so we have quite a few, so I want to try to get to as many of them as possible. The first one, which I think is funny, was, Lisa, what's in those jars behind you? We all need to know.
Well, now that you know, it's been established that I'm a vampire. No, those are when people like send me, like we were talking about, feedback from, you know, like kids will send me letters or emails or whatever. I print them off and I put them in my jars.
Oh,
and this, I call them my inspiration jars, because then, you know, like when I'm writing, and, you know, you get to that point when you're writing, you always do, where you're like, I suck, my writing sucks, I don't know what I'm going to do, I can't write a sentence well, who am I, what do I think I'm doing? And then, you know, I look, and how am I going to figure out this plot, and how am I going to make this transition? And I look over and I'm like, you know what, I did it once, I'll do it again. You know what I mean? It just kind of calms me down, my anxiety, I think. But it also just reminds me that that, you know, I'm reaching people. I'm reaching people, and that's what I wanted to do to start.
I love that.
So sweet.
So we have some like publishing specific questions that I'm going to get to after this next one. But this one is, do you have any tips for getting comfortable with reclaiming fat for those of us who might be in the process of trying to become comfortable with that? Do you have any like specific tips? Besides the, you know, the brain diet, I think that was a really good one that we kind of came up with later on.
I think that, you know, there are things that you can ease your way into, and there are things that you just have to like run through the wall like you're the Kool-Aid man. And I think the word fat is one of those things. I think that you just have to start using it, and like forcefully using it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm a baby steps kind of person in most things in my life, but I feel like with this one, you've just got to embrace it. You just got to say, today's the day that I'm going to start using the word fat.
I agree. I mean, you could start, like, if you have a close friend or someone you feel really comfortable with, you could try it with them, right? But don't, if it feels weird, like push past the weirdness and keep going, because it's going to feel better the more you do it, and then it's going to feel really natural, and then you're going to eventually be caught off guard when someone's like, do you mean plus size or curvy? And you're gonna be like, no, I meant fat, I meant what I said. And that's going to feel weird to you. So yeah, I think you have to just do it, like Julie said, and then maybe taking on some of these like daily issues, like curating your social media feed, taking a bunch of pictures of yourself and keeping it in your camera roll. And then if you can't look at it right away, that's okay. Look at it at some point. Getting mirrors and like looking at your body that way. And I think getting unafraid of having a photo taken of you that's unflattering. Like, we're all just, pictures are just like one moment in time, right? And so anybody can take an unflattering picture. Beyonce, who I adore, has tried to get unflattering photos of her taken off the internet. If there can be an unflattering photo of Beyonce, there is no hope for all the rest of us. So like, take some ugly pictures too. Take some pictures of like you from down below and look at your chin and be like, you know what? It's actually kind of cute here. So like get okay with that feeling. And I think it'll make it so that when you do take a picture or someone takes a photo of you, it doesn't feel like, oh, that's what my body looks like. And instead you're like, yeah, that's what my body looks like.
Yeah, I always think of a pool analogy, right? Because, you know, you want to be in the pool, right? You want to be to that place where you are okay with who you are. Because you know what? I think that most of us eventually reach that point where like we're sick of hating ourselves just because someone told us to hate ourselves, because society told us to hate ourselves, or because, you know, some group told us to hate ourselves, whatever. And we don't want that. We just want peace with our bodies. We want joy. We want life. We want to live. We want to be who we are. And I see that as like a pool party, right? So you have lots of ways to get in the pool. You can take the steps down. You can sit on the edge and kick your feet around for a while, right? Or you can just splash in, right? And I think it's okay as long as you do it. I think that's the key, is that you do it. You know, go to the pool and get in there. Get in there.
I thought you were gonna say, or you can just starfish. I was waiting.
You starfish once you're in the pool.
Yeah, there you go. I know that we're short on time, but I do just want to add that none of us know what kind of trauma the word fat holds for anyone else. And so I do try to be very respectful of checking to see what words people use before just in the same way we do with gender, before I refer to anyone. So it's okay. It's okay if you don't splash into the pool yet. It's okay if you don't run through the wall like the Kool-Aid man or the 𝗍𝗵𝗃𝗲 man or whoever it is that's shaped like a pitcher, but you know.
Find your word. And that's fine too.
Yes, and use it for yourself, not necessarily for other people. I think it's like really what Julie was trying to get across, the fact that like we can call ourselves fat, but calling other people fat might not be the best idea if they're not doing that yet. So our publishing type questions are, what has it been like to tried to get into the publishing world with your fat characters? Have you felt pressure to label them as fat, to not label them as fat? Is there anything that might help or harm somebody who's trying to get published by like saying that their characters are fat? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
For me, I knew I wanted to write fat characters, and that was going to be what every book is going to have fat characters in it. And so when I was querying for my first book, that was a conscious decision I was making, because that was so important to me. And I was like, I want to talk about this. And I this was a thing I want to do. But I could also see if you're like, I just want to write, like, I don't know, a cute little fantasy book, and I don't necessarily want to talk about bodies or fatness, you could make the choice to not include that in your query. And I think that that's every bit as valid. Like, I don't think you have to, I think sometimes it's hard when you're part of any marginalized group to sometimes feel the pressure, like you have to not only embrace those marginalizations, but also like put them on display kind of for everyone else. And I don't want any author to ever feel like they have to do that, right? I think if you feel empowered and you're like, I want to write this fat character and I want everybody to use use that word to describe them, I think that's great. I personally did not experience any pushback that I know of with the fat characters. Of course, you never know why exactly you get rejected. It could be that like I got rejected sometimes because they're like, we already have our one fat book, so thanks so much, but no. So you might run up against that. But if you find, I think, the right publisher and the right editor, hopefully they will love your character in all of its fatness and want to celebrate that the same way that you want to.
Great answer.
Yes. Our other like publishing, like writing type question is, how do you write fat characters without hurting yourself? When I write about my fat character, it can be very painful for me. Any tips?
I really went through this with 𝗵𝗶𝗀. So my very first book that I released, the main characters aren't fat in any way. And so when I released 𝗵𝗶𝗀, I was like, I'm going to write a fat girl book and it's going to hurt, but I'm going to try to do it anyways. And my publisher was like, okay, we'll do that. We're not going to pay you very much money because we don't expect this to go very far, because this isn't really how things work. And so I had to, as I was writing this book, I had to get to a point where I was creating emotional distance between myself and my characters, because it was getting to be really traumatic and really hard for me to untangle myself from the work. So I think that there's this really fine line that you walk as a writer, where writing about past trauma can feel really freeing and empowering. And then it can also feel like you're forcing yourself to relive all of these things to a detrimental point. So I think there's no easy answer. It's really just about knowing yourself and knowing your own limits. And also, like, it's okay if it's not time yet. It's okay if you're not ready yet. There are things in my life that I really want to write about, but I know that like the time for that in my life hasn't come yet. I feel too close to those situations or to those like issues that I've had in my life to feel ready to write about those things. So I really think it's about knowing like which of those two situations you fall into. Like, do you have enough room where you feel like you can create space in your writing and you can disconnect a little bit, or is it too soon?
That was perfect. I have nothing to add.
I was going to say, I accidentally tortured myself a little too much.
Oh no!
On Starfish. So I'm right there with Julie. I think that, you know, you have to give that little bit of line there. You can't cross, because otherwise it becomes too hard for you as a person. You know what I mean? Because you're a writer and you're a person. So when you cross that line and you get too hard into the person part while you're doing the writing part, it can be kind of torturous.
And sometimes the answer is like small things, like just simply like making your characters so different from you and giving them such a different background that even the things that feel familiar are not the exact same. That was always really helpful, especially with like the first few fat books I wrote. That was really, really helpful for me.
And we are running up on time. So we're going to try to do like real quick, share where we can find you on social. And there's been a request for any accounts that people can put in their social media diet. If you have one that you would absolutely include in a body confident diet.
Well, you can find me at 𝗶𝗿𝗃. I'm that everywhere: TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Find me, follow me. And I would highly recommend following The Body Is Not an Apology. They are on Instagram. They're also, I believe, on TikTok. It's just life-changing. There's also a book. There's even a self-help workbook that you can work through it, and it's inclusive. We've got, you know, BIPOC representation, we've got gender representation, like it's just got everything, and it will touch on bodies but also diet culture, and it's just going to rock your world. So enjoy.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
I was going to say that's one of my big ones. I have a lot, but you can find me. Everything is author Lisa Fipps. Like, that's my website. That's my social media. Just remember, Fipps is with an F and not a PH, because people always start looking for me under a PH, and then like, I can't find you. But you can always, can't you see someone's following? Like, you can see who I'm following, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look in through there. You can see there's tons of different ones, and I really believe in diversity, like as having as many diverse like spectrums. I mean, there are people who are way out. There's like, I follow one, I think it's called Fat Art History or something like that. And, you know, it's just pictures of fat people in art. And some of them are a little more graphic than others, but I mean, you know, but I'm into art. I was an artist before I was a writer, so it didn't bother me any, but I think there's so many, but just start searching and you'll find them. And once you find one, you know what I mean? The analytics will get you going on another. That's how I do it.
You can find me just about anywhere as And I'm Julie, because it was my screen name in college. That's the real answer there. I can't tell you how many people meet me in person and try to call me Andy. Whoops. My bad. Oh gosh, as far as fat people I love to follow online, there are so many. And like Lisa was saying, you can totally scroll through my followers and find like probably like 1,000 of them. But yes, and Emily in the chat said maintenance phase is great. Maintenance phase is so good if you're not following oh my gosh, your fat friend yet. You need to follow your fat friend. They're one of the folks on maintenance phase. I also, just as friends and people I like to follow, I follow Fat Girl Flow. Her name is Chris. I've known her for many, many years, and I love her, and she's vulgar and she's unapologetically fat. I also love to follow Chris's partner, whose name is Jay, and they are Comfy Fat Travels, I think, online. And then also we were talking about fat people on reality trash TV, and one of my favorite people was on The Circle. Her name is Sean Taylor, and she's getting married this year, and she's like a not like one of the brides for like the 𝗵𝗏𝗃𝗀. Like she's really like just like, I just love following her. And she's got like the like juicy kind of fun, like mindless social media, but she's also very thinky and smart about being fat. So those are three of mine. And I mean, there's so many. So
someone in the chat said Roxanne Gay. That's a good one.
Always good.
Sarah Walker, who wrote Dietland for Netflix.
Oh yeah, Sarah, yeah. She just had a new book come out called The Cherry Robbers. So yeah. I highly recommend her too.
Fabulous. So I want to say thank you to all of you for being part of our virtual roundtable, and thank everyone that attended. We could be here for a very long time talking about this topic, but I hope this started something for all of you. And I'm going to just say enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Support public libraries. Like, share, and subscribe for more great videos.